The message arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning. In the United Nations Space Command Center, Admiral Tom White stared at the holographic display with disbelief. Another civilization had fallen to the Dominion. "Play it again," he ordered, his voice heavy with concern. The recording showed crystal-like ships tearing through the defenses of the Centauri, one of the most advanced races in the known galaxy. Their mighty warships, once thought unbeatable, crumbled like paper toys against the Dominion's gravitational weapons. "Sir, that's the 15th species to surrender this month," reported Officer David. His hands trembled as he brought up more data. The Dominion has taken over 80% of known space in just 50 years. The Dominion wasn't like anything the galaxy had seen before. They weren't organic, at least not in any traditional sense. They were crystalline beings who had mastered the fundamental forces of the universe. Their ships didn't just travel through space. They bent it to their will. Admiral White walked to the window, looking out at the gleaming towers of New Washington. Earth still seemed peaceful, untouched by the terror spreading across the stars. But he knew that wouldn't last long. "What happens when a species refuses to surrender?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. Officer David pulled up another recording. This one showed a planet being torn apart by invisible forces. The Dominion ships had simply pointed at it, and gravitational forces had ripped it to pieces. They don't leave survivors, It's either submit or face extinction. In the following days, more reports flooded in. The Dominion's pattern was always the same. They would arrive in a system, demonstrate their power, and offer a simple choice: join their empire or be destroyed. Most races chose survival. They became part of the Dominion's ever-growing empire, forced to provide resources and serve their new masters. At an emergency meeting of Earth's Defense Council, military leaders from around the world gathered to discuss the threat. "The Arcturus defense line has fallen," General Martinez announced, marking off another sector on the star map. "The Dominion will reach our solar system in less than 6 months." The room erupted in worried whispers. Humanity had only achieved faster-than-light travel 30 years ago. Compared to the Dominion, Earth's technology was like stone tools against nuclear weapons. "What about our allies?" someone asked. Admiral White shook his head. "The Trading Federation surrendered yesterday. The Mining Collective this morning. We're on our own." The room fell silent. On screens around them, they could see recordings of Dominion ships in action. They moved like liquid crystal through space, ignoring the laws of physics as humans understood them. Their weapons didn't fire beams or projectiles. They simply warped reality itself. But then something unexpected happened. As the council watched the latest footage, Officer David noticed a detail everyone else had missed. "Look at this," he said, zooming in on a battle recording. The Dominion ships always followed the same attack patterns. They're perfect, precise, too precise. Admiral White leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "You think that's a weakness?" "Yes, sir. They're powerful, but they're predictable. They've never had to adapt their tactics because no one has ever truly fought back." The Admiral stood up, a small smile forming on his face. "Then maybe it's time someone did. Humanity has never been good at following patterns or taking orders from bullies." As the meeting continued into the night, Earth's leaders began to form a plan. They didn't have the Dominion's technology. They couldn't match their power. But humans had something the crystalline conquerors had never encountered: unpredictability. "Send word to all our remaining outposts," Admiral White ordered. "Earth will not surrender. We will not kneel. Let the Dominion come. They'll learn that not everything in this galaxy follows their perfect patterns." As the message went out, humanity began to prepare. They had 6 months to get ready for a fight against impossible odds. But throughout human history, impossible odds had often brought out the best in them. The Crystal Conquerors were about to learn why. 6 months passed quickly. Earth had transformed itself into a fortress, but compared to the Dominion's mighty fleet now entering the solar system, it looked like a sandcastle before a tsunami. Captain Roberts stood on the bridge of the EDF Defiant, one of Earth's newest warships, watching as his crew prepared for battle. They had spent months training for this moment, but nothing could truly prepare them for what was coming. Multiple ships detected near Jupiter's orbit, reported his sensor officer, Bill. They're beautiful, sir. The Dominion fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel like a shower of falling stars. Their crystal ships sparkled in the sunlight, each one larger than Earth's biggest cities. The sight was as terrifying as it was magnificent. "Remember the plan," Captain Roberts said, keeping his voice steady. "We're not here to win a fair fight. We're here to show them that humans don't play by their rules." Earth's defense strategy was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Instead of positioning their fleet in traditional defensive formations, humanity had scattered their forces throughout the solar system. Mining ships had been converted into weapon platforms. Civilian vessels carried hidden weapons. Even space junk had been turned into carefully disguised mines. The Dominion's first transmission arrived right on schedule. "Greetings, beings of Earth," the crystalline voice echoed through all communication channels. "We are the Dominion. Your species has been chosen to join our perfect empire. Resist, and you will be erased. You have 1 hour to decide." Admiral White's response was immediate. "This is Earth. We hear you, and our answer is no." The battle began exactly as Earth had predicted. The Dominion ships moved in their perfect, practiced formations, expecting another easy victory. They never saw the first trap coming. "Now," Captain Robert ordered. Hundreds of seemingly abandoned mining ships suddenly activated near Jupiter. Their industrial mining lasers, originally designed to cut through asteroids, sliced into the crystalline hulls of the smaller Dominion ships. The enemy vessels, not expecting an attack from what they had dismissed as space debris, took heavy damage. "It worked," Bill shouted, watching the sensor readings. Their shields weren't even up. But the Dominion adapted quickly. Their larger ships began to use their gravitational weapons, crushing the mining vessels like empty soda cans. Yet even as they did this, Earth's real attack began. Small, fast ships darted out from hiding places in Jupiter's radiation belts. They didn't try to fight the Dominion head-on. Instead, they struck quickly and disappeared back into the radiation that confused the enemy sensors. It was a tactic learned from Earth's own history, guerrilla warfare taken to the stars. "Keep them guessing," Captain Robert commanded as the Defiant swooped past a massive Dominion warship. "Don't let them predict our moves." The battle raged across the solar system. The Dominion's superior technology allowed them to destroy any Earth ship they could catch, but catching them proved surprisingly difficult. Human vessels flew in ways that defied all military logic, hiding in gas giant storms, using small moons as shields, and even deliberately colliding with each other to change direction unpredictably. "Sir," Bill called out, "the Dominion fleet." "They're hesitating." He was right. For the first time in their long history of conquest, the Dominion ships had stopped their advance. Their perfect formations had broken up as they tried to deal with attacks coming from all directions at once. In the chaos, Captain Roberts spotted something crucial. The Dominion ships always took exactly 3 seconds to recharge their gravitational weapons after firing. It wasn't much, but it was a pattern, and patterns could be exploited. "Send this to all Earth ships," he ordered. "Time your attacks between their shots. Hit them while they're recharging." The tide didn't turn. Humanity was still desperately outgunned, but for the first time, the Dominion's casualties began to mount. Their perfect record of unopposed conquest had been broken. As the battle's first day ended, Admiral White sent a new message to all Earth forces. "Well done, everyone. We've bloodied their nose. Now they know that humanity won't just roll over and die. But this is just the beginning. Tomorrow, we show them even more of what humans can do." The Dominion was about to learn that conquering Earth wouldn't be like any of their previous victories. This was going to be a fight they would never forget. After 3 days of unexpected resistance, The Dominion did something they had never done before. They requested a meeting. The crystalline ambassador, known simply as First Speaker, arrived at the neutral meeting point near Mars. Its body sparkled like diamonds, changing colors as it moved. A team of Earth's representatives waited in a hastily prepared meeting room aboard the International Space Station Beta. Admiral White studied the alien being. Unlike the recordings they'd seen of other first contact meetings, the Dominion ambassador seemed unsettled. "Your tactics are illogical," First Speaker said, its voice creating strange echoes in the room. "You cannot win, yet you continue to fight. Why?" "Because that's what humans do," Admiral White replied simply. "We fight when we need to." The crystalline being shifted colors, showing what might have been frustration. "You use mining ships as weapons. You hide behind moons. Your pilots fly into debris fields that should destroy them. None of this follows established combat protocols." Lieutenant Adams, who had been quietly taking notes, couldn't help but smile. "With all respect," she said, "humanity never got a copy of those protocols." First Speaker turned its attention to her, its surface now pulsing with deep blue light. "Yesterday, one of your ships pretended to be destroyed, then attacked when our guard was down. This is deception. This is not how war is conducted." "That's exactly how war is conducted, at least by humans," Admiral White explained. "We use every advantage we can get. When we're outgunned, we get creative." The meeting continued for several hours. The more they talked, the more obvious it became. The Dominion had never faced an enemy that fought like humans. Every other species had either immediately surrendered or fought in traditional, predictable ways. Back on the EDF Defiant, Captain Robert received the report from the meeting. "They really expected us to just line up our ships and fight them head-on," he told his crew, shaking his head in amazement. "Sir," Bill called out suddenly, "multiple Dominion ships approaching. They're in. Wait, that can't be right." The enemy fleet had broken their usual perfect formation. They were trying to copy human tactics, attempting to be unpredictable. But their movements were still too precise, too calculated. "They're learning," Captain Robert observed, "but they're thinking too much. Humans react on instincts sometimes. They can't copy that." The next wave of battles proved him right. The Dominion ships tried new tactics, but they were like dancers who had memorized new steps, still following patterns, just different ones. Earth's forces continued their guerrilla warfare. Small ships would dart out from hidden bases on asteroids, strike quickly, and disappear. Civilian ships would suddenly transform into weapon platforms. Even space garbage was dangerous. The humans had turned their own orbital debris into a weapon, forcing Dominion ships to waste energy dealing with swarms of deadly junk. First Speaker sent another message. "Your species is problematic. You do not behave as you should. Our simulations cannot predict your actions." "That's because we're not machines," Admiral White responded. "We don't follow programming. We adapt. We improvise. And sometimes we do things simply because someone said we couldn't." The Dominion's frustration became more evident. Their perfect formations had completely broken down as they tried to deal with human unpredictability. Their advanced technology was still devastating when it hit its target, but hitting those targets was becoming increasingly difficult. "Look at this," Lieutenant Adams pointed out during a strategy meeting. "They always send reinforcements when 3 or more of their ships are under attack. Always. That's something we can use." Admiral White nodded. "Send word to all ships. Next time we attack, I want half our forces waiting to ambush their reinforcements. Let's show them another human tactic, the trap." As the orders went out, Earth's defenders prepared for their boldest move yet. They had learned that while the Dominion's technology was superior, their thinking was rigid. They couldn't handle chaos, couldn't adapt to rapid changes, couldn't understand why humans would take seemingly suicidal risks to achieve their goals. And that was going to be their downfall. Because if there was one thing humans excelled at, it was causing chaos. "They're falling for it," Bill whispered, watching his sensor screen aboard the EDF Defiant. "All 3 Dominion ships are chasing our decoys." Captain Robert allowed himself a small smile. The plan was working perfectly, almost too perfectly. His ship, along with 5 others, lay hidden in the thick dust clouds of the asteroid belt. They had spent days studying how the crystalline ships reacted to attacks. "Send in the mining fleet," he ordered. What happened next would be remembered as one of the most unusual battles in human history. 20 gold mining ships, their industrial cutting lasers replaced with makeshift weapons, charged straight at the Dominion fleet. As expected, the crystal ships moved to crush these seemingly primitive vessels. That's when Earth's trap snapped shut. "Now," Captain Robert commanded. His ships burst from their hiding places, their weapons already charged. But they weren't aiming at the Dominion vessels. They were targeting the space around them. The asteroid field exploded into action. Hundreds of small charges, hidden earlier by the mining ships during their routine work, detonated at once. The explosions weren't meant to damage the mighty Dominion ships. Instead, they filled space with debris and dust, creating a massive cloud that blocked the crystalline vessel's sensors. "They're blind," Bill reported excitedly. "Their fancy gravity weapons need clear lines of sight." Inside the dust cloud, Earth's ships moved like sharks in murky water. They had trained for weeks to fight in these conditions, using old-fashioned radar and basic heat sensors. The Dominion's advanced technology, which relied on perfect information and clean sensor data, was suddenly a disadvantage. Lieutenant Emma, commanding one of the mining ships, drove her vessel straight toward a Dominion cruiser. Her crew had dubbed their ship the Mole. It wasn't pretty, but it could take a beating. "Activate the magnets," she ordered. The mining ship's powerful electromagnetic clamps, designed for moving asteroids, locked onto the crystal surface of the enemy vessel. The Dominion ship's gravity weapons were useless at such close range. They couldn't attack without damaging themselves. All across the battlefield, other mining ships did the same thing. They latched onto the enemy vessels like remoras on sharks, using their industrial cutting tools to slice through the crystalline hulls. "This is madness," came the frustrated transmission from the Dominion command ship. "You are violating every principle of space combat." "We're rewriting those principles," Captain Robert responded, as his ship scored another hit. "Humanity's gift to the galaxy, a whole new way of fighting." The battle raged for hours. Earth lost ships, but for every human vessel destroyed, they managed to severely damage or disable a Dominion craft. The crystal ship's perfect formations had become a liability in the chaotic dust cloud, as they kept colliding with each other trying to maintain their programmed spacing. Back on Earth, Admiral White received the battle reports with growing hope. "They still don't understand," he told his staff. "They think technology alone wins wars. They never learned that the most dangerous weapon is the human mind." The tide turned completely when Lieutenant Emma discovered something unexpected. Her mining ship's magnetic clamps had a strange effect on the crystal ship's structure. The powerful electromagnetic fields seemed to interfere with the very essence of the Dominion vessels. "Sir," she reported excitedly, "their hulls are becoming brittle under our magnetic field. They're not just crystal. They're some kind of living crystal that reacts to electromagnetic energy." This discovery spread quickly through Earth's fleet. Soon, every ship was modifying their magnetic systems to exploit this weakness. The Dominion vessels, for the first time, began to retreat in disarray. As the dust settled, Captain Robert surveyed the battlefield. The mighty Dominion fleet had lost nearly a third of its ships to what they had dismissed as primitive mining vessels and improvised weapons. "Send word to Earth," he ordered. "Tell them we found their weakness, and tell them to start modifying every electromagnet we have. It's time to take this fight to the next level." The crystal ships fled the asteroid belt, leaving behind their damaged and disabled companions. Humanity had won its first major victory, but more importantly, they had discovered something that would change the entire war. The Dominion weren't invincible after all. They were just another enemy that could be studied, understood, and defeated. In the 3 weeks since discovering the Dominion's weakness to electromagnetic fields, Earth's scientists had worked nonstop. Research labs around the world studied the captured crystal ships, trying to understand their strange technology. Dr. Kate stood in her laboratory, surrounded by glowing crystal fragments. She had barely slept in days, but her eyes were bright with excitement. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a display screen. The crystal sample was pulsing with inner light, responding to the magnetic field she was generating. "These aren't just ships. They're alive." Admiral White watched the demonstration with growing interest. "Alive? You mean the whole ship is one living thing?" "Exactly," Dr. Kate replied. "And like any living thing, it can be hurt. The magnetic fields don't just damage them, they disrupt their ability to control gravity. It's like giving them a massive headache." The discovery changed everything. Within days, Earth's factories were converting their production lines to create powerful electromagnetic weapons. Every ship in the fleet was being fitted with magnetic pulse generators. On the front lines, Captain Robert prepared his crew for their first attack with the new weapons. The EDF Defiant had been upgraded with the largest magnetic pulse generator they could build. "Remember," he told his crew, "we're not just fighting ships anymore. We're fighting living creatures. They can feel pain, and they can be scared." The chance to test the new weapons came sooner than expected. A Dominion fleet, larger than any they'd seen before, appeared near Saturn. "They're angry," Bill observed from his sensor station. "Look at their formation. It's aggressive, not their usual perfect pattern." Captain Robert nodded. The Dominion had lost their first major battle, and now they were back for revenge. But this time, Earth was ready. "All ships," he broadcast to the human fleet, "activate magnetic shields and prepare pulse weapons. Let's show them what we've learned." The battle began with the Dominion's usual display of overwhelming force. Their gravity weapons reached out to crush Earth's ships. But this time, something was different. The magnetic shields around the human vessels disrupted the gravity attacks, weakening them significantly. "It's working," Lieutenant Emma shouted from her ship. "Their weapons aren't as effective." Then Earth struck back. The new pulse weapons fired, sending waves of electromagnetic energy washing over the crystal ships. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The mighty vessels writhed like living things in pain, their perfect formations shattering. "They're retreating," Bill announced, surprise clear in his voice. "The big ones are actually running away." But Dr. Kate, watching from Earth through the fleet's cameras, saw something else. "Wait," she called over the command channel. "Look at the smaller ships. They're not retreating. They're breaking free." She was right. Several of the smaller Dominion vessels were acting strangely, moving away from their fleet in erratic patterns. When they transmitted, their message shocked everyone. "Humans," came the crystal voice, different from the usual Dominion transmissions. "We understand now. We were enslaved, controlled by the larger ones. Your weapons have freed us." The revelation stunned Earth's forces. The smaller crystal ships weren't just parts of the Dominion fleet. They were younger members of the species, forced to serve the larger, more powerful ones. Admiral White quickly made a decision. To all Earth forces, do not fire on the separated ships. Offer them protection instead. The battle transformed into something unprecedented. As Earth's ships continued firing their pulse weapons, more and more small crystal vessels broke away from the Dominion's control. The larger ships, facing both human weapons and rebellion from their own kind, finally retreated in disarray. In the aftermath, Dr. Kate worked with the freed crystal ships, learning more about their nature. "They're like coral," she explained to Admiral White. "The big ones grow over centuries, becoming more rigid in both body and mind. They enslave their own children to build their empire." Captain Robert, watching the smaller crystal ships peacefully orbiting Earth, smiled. "So we didn't just find a way to fight them," he said. "We found a way to free them." Humanity had done more than win a battle. They had changed the very nature of the war and gained some unexpected allies in the process. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Earth had not only resisted the Dominion, but had found a way to free the enslaved crystal ships. For the first time in centuries, hope began to grow among the conquered species. Captain Robert stood on the bridge of the EDF Defiant, now accompanied by a small crystal ship that the crew had nicknamed Sparkle. The young crystal being had been teaching them more about Dominion technology. Another transmission from the Centauri system, Bill reported excitedly. They've started their uprising. The view screen showed scenes of rebellion across different star systems. The Centauri, inspired by Earth's resistance, had built their own magnetic pulse weapons. Other species were following suit. The big ones never let us communicate with other species, Sparkle's crystalline voice explained. They feared we would learn to question their control. Admiral White, coordinating from Earth, had a bold new plan. The freed crystal ships had shared the locations of key Dominion control centers, massive space stations where the largest crystal beings maintained their grip on conquered worlds. "This is our chance," he told the gathered fleet commanders. "We're not just fighting for Earth anymore. We're fighting to free the galaxy." Lieutenant Emma, now commanding her own ship, led the first major liberation mission. Her vessel, along with 3 freed crystal ships and a squadron of Earth fighters, jumped into the Proxima system. "Remember the plan," she told her crew. "We're not here to destroy. We're here to free." The battle that followed was unlike anything seen before in the galaxy. Human ships, working alongside their new crystal allies, attacked the Dominion control station with perfectly synchronized magnetic pulses. The younger crystal ships added their own energy to the attack, their combined power overwhelming the station's defenses. As the station's control weakened, thousands of enslaved beings broke free. Crystal ships of all sizes abandoned their posts, turning against their former masters. The massive station, once a symbol of Dominion power, became the center of a revolution. "We're receiving transmissions from everywhere," Bill announced, his hands flying over his console. "The Arcturus Defense Line, the Trading Federation, the Mining Collective, they're all rising up." The Dominion's perfect empire was crumbling. Without their enslaved forces, the elder crystal beings found themselves facing resistance on all fronts. Their rigid tactics, which had worked for centuries, failed against the combined creativity of humans and freed crystal ships. On a liberated world, Captain Robert watched as humans taught the local species how to build electromagnetic weapons. Next to him, Sparkle communicated with other freed crystal ships, sharing knowledge that had been forbidden for generations. "The big ones forgot something important," Sparkle observed. "They forgot that strength comes from growth and change, not from staying the same forever." Admiral White received reports from across the galaxy. The Dominion was retreating from system after system, their power breaking apart as their former slaves turned against them. Earth ships, leading combined fleets of various species, pushed forward into former Dominion space. But the elder crystal beings weren't finished yet. As they lost their empire, they became more dangerous, more desperate. Reports came in of them destroying entire worlds rather than seeing them freed. "They're gathering their remaining forces," Lieutenant Emma reported during an emergency meeting. "The biggest crystal ships are assembling near their home system. They're planning something big." Captain Robert, studying the tactical displays with Sparkle, noticed a pattern. "They're not just gathering," he said. "They're merging. The elder ships are physically combining into something massive." Admiral White looked at the data with concern. "How many ships?" "At least 50 of the largest ones," Sparkle answered, its crystalline surface flickering with worry. "They're becoming something that hasn't existed in our history, a crystal being of unprecedented size and power." The freed crystal ships shared what they knew. The elder ones were preparing for one final battle, one that would either restore their empire or end in their complete destruction. Earth and its allies had won many victories, but the greatest challenge still lay ahead. The true test would not be in fighting an empire, but in facing a desperate enemy with nothing left to lose. The combined fleet of Earth and its allies faced the most terrifying sight in galactic history. The elder crystal beings had merged into a single massive entity, a structure so large it rivaled small moons in size. Its surface pulsed with deadly energy, sending out waves of gravitational force that distorted space itself. "By all the stars," whispered Bill from his sensor station on the EDF Defiant, "it's bigger than anything we've ever seen." Captain Robert stood at his command post, surrounded by both human crew and crystal allies. Sparkle's light flickered nervously as it analyzed the massive entity. "They'd gone mad," Sparkle said. "The Elders have forgotten everything except their desire for control. They'll destroy the galaxy rather than accept change." Admiral White's voice came through on all channels. "All ships, remember the plan. We didn't come this far to give up now. Humanity never surrenders, and neither do our allies." The great battle began with a display of power that shook the very fabric of space. The merged elder beings unleashed gravitational forces that could tear planets apart. Several ships from the Allied fleet were crushed instantly. But humanity had planned for this. Earth's scientists, working with freed crystal ships, had made one final breakthrough. "All ships, activate the resonance pulse," Lieutenant Emma commanded from her vessel. Just like we practiced. Thousands of ships, both human and crystal, fired their magnetic weapons in perfect synchronization. The pulses were timed to match the natural frequency of crystal beings, something they learned from their freed allies. The effect was like striking a glass with exactly the right note to shatter it. The massive crystal entity shuddered. Cracks began appearing across its surface. But it fought back with even greater fury, its gravitational weapons creating a killing field of twisted space around it. "We need to get closer," Captain Robert shouted. "The pulses aren't strong enough at this range." That's when Lieutenant Emma did something that would be remembered for generations. She piloted her ship directly into the gravity storm, her magnetic shield straining against the forces trying to crush her vessel. "The closer we get," she transmitted, "the stronger our pulses will be. Follow me in." Other ships joined her, creating a corridor through the gravitational chaos. Human vessels flew alongside crystal ships, each protecting the other, their combined determination stronger than the elder being's power. At point-blank range, they fired again. This time, the resonance pulses struck with devastating effect. The massive crystal entity began to break apart, its perfect structure shattering into thousands of pieces. But victory came at a cost. Lieutenant Emma's ship, damaged by the gravitational forces, began to break up. Captain Robert watched in horror as her vessel started to disintegrate. That's when something remarkable happened. The freed crystal ships moved as one, surrounding Emma's failing vessel. They merged their own structures around her ship, creating a protective cocoon of living crystal. The elder being made one final attempt to maintain control. As it broke apart, it tried to pull everything into a gravitational vortex that would destroy both sides. "Not this time," Captain Robert said firmly. "All ships, full power to the pulse weapons. Let's finish this." The combined fleet fired one last time. The resonance pulse shattered what remained of the elder being structure. Instead of a catastrophic gravitational collapse, the entity broke into countless small crystals, each one no larger than a typical ship. As the dust settled, Admiral White's voice came through again. "Status report. The elder being is gone," Sparkle reported, "but not destroyed. They've been broken down into their original forms. They're young again." Lieutenant Emma, rescued from her ship by the Crystal Allies, watched in awe as the former elder being, now reduced to thousands of smaller crystals, drifted harmlessly in space. "They get a second chance," she said softly. "A chance to grow up differently this time." In the days that followed, the galaxy began to rebuild. The freed crystal beings, both old and new, worked alongside organic species to create something unprecedented. A true community of different life forms working together. Earth became known not just as the planet that resisted the Dominion, but as the world that showed the galaxy a better way. They proved that true strength comes not from forcing others to be like you, but from learning to work together despite differences. As Captain Robert stood on Earth's surface, watching crystal ships peacefully gliding through the sky alongside human vessels, he smiled. "We didn't just win a war," he said. "We won a future."